Forget the politicians you see on TV, forget the CEOs making headlines. The real power in Canada isn't who you think it is. There's a handful of families so wealthy, so deeply embedded in the country's foundation, that you literally can't go a single day without putting money in their pockets. From the bread on your table to the gas in your car, from the news you read to the banks that hold your money, these dynasties don't just live in Canada, they own it. And the most shocking part, most Canadians have no idea just how much control these families have over their daily lives. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the puppet masters of the Great White North. By the end of this video, you'll realize you've been living in their world this entire time. 11. The Morgan family. 1.2 billion. The seafood empire that controls Atlantic Canada. Let's start our countdown with a family that turned fish into billions. The Morgan family might not be a household name across Canada, but in the Atlantic provinces, they're royalty. Picture this: every lobster dinner served in Manhattan's finest restaurants, every scallop plated in Tokyo's Michelin-starred establishments. There's a good chance it passed through Morgan hands first. Through their stake in Clearwater Seafoods, they built North America's largest shellfish empire, exporting to over 40 countries. But here's where it gets interesting. In 2020, they orchestrated a masterful $1 billion exit, cashing out at the perfect moment while keeping their fingers in maritime shipping, fisheries technology, and international logistics. They own prime coastal real estate, luxury development stretching from Halifax to the furthest reaches of Nova Scotia. We're talking private yachts moored in exclusive harbors, heritage properties that have been in the family for generations. The Morgans prove that in Canada, you don't need to be flashy to be phenomenally wealthy. They move in silence, but their influence over Atlantic Canada's economy is absolute. From ocean floor to boardroom table, they've quietly built a billion-dollar empire that most Canadians don't even know exists. 10. The Saputo family, $2.5 billion, the cheese kings who feed the nation. Next up, a family whose empire is literally in every Canadian's refrigerator. The Saputo dynasty began with Giuseppe Saputo, an Italian immigrant who arrived in Montreal in 1954 with nothing but a dream and the ability to make cheese by hand. Fast forward to today, Saputo Inc. is a $16 billion colossus, one of the top 10 dairy processors on the planet. Armstrong, Dairyland, Nielsen, these aren't just brands, they're tentacles of the Saputo empire reaching into millions of Canadian homes every single day. They've expanded across 5 continents, processing milk in the US, Australia, the UK, and Argentina. But the Saputos aren't content with just dairy dominance. They own vineyards in the rolling hills of Italy, private jets that whisk them between their global operations, and some of Montreal's most exclusive real estate. Lino Saputo Jr., now at the helm, has transformed his father's handmade cheese operation into a global powerhouse worth billions. Yet their past holds shadows. Allegations of mafia connections swirled around the family for years, claims Lino Sr. vehemently denied and was never charged for. But in the world of Canadian old money, controversy often comes with the territory. Today, they stand untouchable at the apex of Canada's food industry, their fortune built one wheel of cheese at a time. 9. The Molson family, $3 billion, the dynasty that invented Canadian culture. The Molson family didn't just make beer, they made Canada. When John Molson opened his brewery on the banks of the St. Lawrence River in 1786, Canada wasn't even a country yet. Today, 237 years later, his descendants control a global beverage empire worth billions. Molson Coors pulls in over $10 billion annually, selling everything from Coors Light to Miller Lite in more than 50 countries. But here's what most people don't know. Beer was just the beginning. The Molsons helped found the Bank of Montreal, invested in Canada's first railroads, and their money built hospitals, universities, and cultural institutions across the nation. Their name is literally carved into the country's infrastructure. The Molson School of Business, Molson Stadium, and they even co-own the Montreal Canadiens, because when you're the Molsons, you don't just sponsor hockey, you own it. 6 generations of careful wealth management, strategic marriages, and calculated investments have kept this family at the pinnacle of Canadian high society. They live in sprawling estates, collect priceless art, and move through exclusive circles that most Canadians don't even know exist. The Molsons aren't just old money, they're ancient money, and their influence flows through Canada like the beer from their breweries. 8. The Richardson family, $4 billion, the grain giants who feed the world. Hidden in Winnipeg sits a family so powerful, they literally control what the world eats. The Richardson dynasty has been moving grain for over 160 years. But don't let their low profile fool you. They're worth well over $4 billion. Richardson International isn't just a company, it's an agricultural Death Star. They control grain elevators that dot the prairies like castle towers, food processing plants that operate around the clock, and oilseed facilities that help feed billions. When wheat moves from Canadian farms to global dinner tables, the Richardsons take their cut. But grain is just the foundation. Through James Richardson and Sons, they've built an empire spanning energy with tundra oil and gas pumping thousands of barrels daily. Richardson Financial Group managing billions in private wealth and real estate holdings that would make most developers weep with envy. The family owns private jets to survey their agricultural kingdom, luxury compounds hidden from public view, and one of Canada's most valuable private art collections. Yet you've probably never heard their name. That's by design. The Richardsons operate in the shadows, their influence felt but never seen. Their name appears on libraries and business schools, quiet monuments to a fortune built on feeding the world while staying completely invisible to it. 7. The McCain family. $5 billion, the frozen food empire built from a potato. In 1957, in tiny Florenceville, New Brunswick, population 350, two brothers had an insane idea: freeze French fries and sell them to the world. Today, the McCain family's empire generates over $11 billion annually and operates in 160 countries. Think about this. 1 in every 3 French fries consumed globally comes from McCain. McDonald's, Burger King, KFC, they all depend on McCain's massive processing plants that never stop running. The family doesn't just make fries, they control frozen pizzas, appetizers, desserts, and have exclusive contracts with virtually every major fast food chain on Earth. But success bred family warfare. Wallace and Harrison McCain's relationship exploded in a bitter feud that split the empire. Wallace was forced out and retaliated by co-founding Maple Leaf Foods, creating a rival food empire worth billions more. Yet both branches of the family kept getting richer. Today, they own vast farmlands across multiple provinces, renewable energy projects, transportation networks, and processing facilities that look more like small cities. Their private estates include waterfront mansions in New Brunswick and Toronto's most exclusive neighborhoods. They've donated hundreds of millions to universities and hospitals, ensuring the McCain name will outlive them all. From a single frozen potato to a $5 billion fortune, the McCains turned comfort food into dynastic wealth. 6. The Bronfman family, $7 billion, the bootleggers who became billionaires. The Bronfman family fortune was built on one of history's greatest business opportunities: prohibition. While Americans couldn't legally drink, Samuel Bronfman was perfectly positioned on the Canadian side of the border, building Seagram into the world's largest liquor empire. At their peak, the Bronfmans were worth over $20 billion. They owned everything from DuPont Chemicals to Universal Studios. Then came one of the most catastrophic business decisions in history. Edgar Bronfman Jr. sold the incredibly profitable liquor business to bet everything on entertainment and the internet. The result? They lost billions when the tech bubble burst. But here's the thing about old money: even their failures leave them rich. Through their holding company Claridge, the Bronfmans still control massive real estate portfolios, including luxury developments across North America. They own priceless art collections, stakes in cutting-edge tech companies, and Charles Bronfman alone has given away over $350 million to philanthropy. The family that once controlled global alcohol distribution now quietly manages their remaining billions from the shadows. They're proof that when you're rich enough, even losing 75% of your fortune still leaves you in the billionaires' club. The Bronfmans may have fumbled their empire, but they're still pulling strings most Canadians don't even know exist. 5. The Irving family, $8 billion. The dynasty that owns Atlantic Canada. If you live in New Brunswick, you live in Irving land. This family doesn't just operate in the maritime provinces, they effectively own them. K.C. Irving started with a single gas station in the 1920s. Today, his descendants control an empire so vast, it defies comprehension. Irving Oil operates Canada's largest refinery, producing 320,000 barrels per day, a facility worth over $2 billion alone, but that's just the beginning. The Irvings own over 1 million hectares of timberland. They're literally one of North America's largest private landowners. Through J.D. Irving Limited, they control lumber mills, paper factories, shipyards, railroads, trucking companies, and even the food distribution networks. They employ over 16,000 people, making them the region's largest employer by far. But here's the terrifying part. They also own most of New Brunswick's newspapers. They control the oil you pump, the lumber that builds your house, the trucks that deliver your goods, and the news that tells you about it all. It's vertical integration on a scale that would make the robber barons jealous. The Irving compound is more fortress than home, hidden behind layers of security. They're so secretive that family members rarely give interviews, preferring to rule their maritime kingdom from the shadows. In Atlantic Canada, you don't work with the Irvings. You work for them, whether you know it or not. Chapter 4. The Desmarais family, $9 billion. The power behind the throne. Most Canadians have never heard of the Desmarais family, which is exactly how they like it. Because while you don't know them, they've been quietly controlling Canadian finance and politics for over 50 years. Paul Desmarais Sr. started with a bankrupt bus company in the 1950s. Through a series of brilliant, hostile takeovers, he seized control of Power Corporation of Canada in 1968 and built a financial empire worth over $40 billion. Today, Power Corp owns Great West Lifeco, IGM Financial, and massive stakes in Wealthsimple. When Canadians save for retirement or invest their money, they're often unknowingly enriching the Desmarais dynasty. But money is just half their power. The Desmarais family has been intimately connected to every Canadian Prime Minister for the past 40 years. Pierre Trudeau was a close friend. Brian Mulroney was an advisor. Jean Chrétien's daughter literally married André Desmarais. Paul Martin worked for Power Corp before becoming PM. This isn't influence, it's infiltration at the highest levels of government. Their Sagard estate in Quebec isn't just a property, it's where Canadian policy gets decided over private dinners. The Desmarais family has mastered the art of wielding power without ever appearing powerful. They're the invisible hand guiding Canada's financial and political future, and they've been doing it for 3 generations. 3. The Weston family, $12 billion, the grocery monopoly disguised as competition. Walk into any Canadian grocery store, Loblaws, Superstore, No Frills, T&T, Shoppers Drug Mart, congratulations, you just entered Western territory. This family has achieved something remarkable, a near monopoly disguised as choice. It started in 1882 with George Weston and a single bread route. Today, his descendants control an empire so vast that avoiding their businesses is virtually impossible. They own Loblaw Companies, Canada's largest food retailer. They bought Shoppers Drug Mart for $12.4 billion, giving them control of pharmacy as well. Those President's Choice and no-name products filling Canadian pantries? All Western. Until recently, they also owned Holt Renfrew in Canada and Selfridges in London, which they sold for over $5 billion. Because when you're the Westons, you sell luxury department stores like normal people sell cars. Galen Weston Jr., the current face of the empire, has become a lightning rod for criticism over food prices. But here's what people don't understand. The Westons don't care about public opinion. They care about control. Through George Weston Limited and their private family office, they've structured their wealth to be criticism-proof and competition-proof. They live in estates that cost more than small towns, donate hundreds of millions to hospitals and universities that bear their name, and quietly control what millions of Canadians eat, where they shop, and how much they pay. The Weston family hasn't just cornered the market. They've convinced Canadians that their monopoly is actually variety. 2. The Thomson family, $60 billion, the invisible titans. Now we're entering truly staggering wealth. The Thomson family is worth over $60 billion. That's more than the next 3 families combined. Yet, most Canadians couldn't pick David Thomson out of a lineup. The empire began in 1931 when Roy Thomson, a barber's son, bought a tiny radio station in North Bay, Ontario. He built a media empire so vast that Queen Elizabeth made him a British lord. But it was his son Kenneth who made the genius move. He saw newspapers dying and pivoted to data. The $17 billion Reuters merger in 2008 created Thomson Reuters, and here's what's terrifying. They don't just report the news, they control the information that lawyers, governments, and corporations depend on to function. Every major law firm, every significant trade, every important government decision, it runs through Thomson Reuters systems. Through their holding company Woodbridge, they maintain iron grip control. They own the Globe and Mail, Canada's newspaper of record, meaning they shape national conversation while staying completely invisible. They have massive stakes in Bell Canada and other blue-chip investments that generate billions. David Thomson, the current patriarch, is so secretive he makes other billionaires look like attention seekers. No interviews, no public appearances, no social media, just silent, overwhelming wealth that influences everything while revealing nothing. Kenneth's art collection alone, donated to the Art Gallery of Ontario, was worth over $300 million. Pocket change for a family that measures wealth in tens of billions. The Thomsons have perfected the art of invisible power. They're proof that the greatest fortunes aren't flaunted. They're hidden, pulling strings from shadows most Canadians don't even know exist. Number 1. The combined empire. When they work together, they own everything. They serve on each other's boards. They intermarry. They invest in each other's ventures. They donate to the same political parties, attend the same private clubs, and send their children to the same elite schools. When the Westons need financial services, they use Power Corp companies controlled by the Desmarais family. When the Thomsons need food distribution, they work with McCain or Saputo networks. The Irvings supply oil to companies owned by other families on this list. The Molsons and McCains share distribution networks that crisscross the country. This isn't conspiracy theory. It's conspiracy fact. These families have created an interlocking directorate of wealth that makes competition impossible and ensures their collective dominance over the Canadian economy. Together, these dynasties control over 70% of Canadian grocery retail, the majority of media outlets, critical energy infrastructure, major stakes in all big banks, the food supply chain from farm to table, political influence that transcends party lines. Combined, their wealth exceeds $150 billion, and that's just what's publicly known. The private holdings, offshore accounts, and trust funds could double that number. So the next time you buy groceries, pump gas, read the news, or vote in an election, remember this: you're not living in a democracy. You're living in an oligarchy dressed up as one. These families have built a system where your money inevitably flows into their pockets. Your daily life, from the bread you eat to the news you consume, has been carefully orchestrated by a handful of dynasties that most Canadians don't even know exist. The question isn't whether these families control Canada. They absolutely do. The question is, now that you know the truth, what are you going to do about it? If this video opened your eyes to the hidden power structure of Canada, hit subscribe and ring that notification bell, because once you see how deep this rabbit hole goes, you'll never look at wealth the same way again. Drop a comment below. Which family shocked you the most? And more importantly, do you think Canada can ever break free from their control?